IVM.
10 reasons why you should listen to this episode. The 8th one will blow your mind. Is somehow maybe in an alternate universe I would have started this episode. While existing in a world bound together by the World Wide Web, we come across a lot of pockets of information and virtual worlds that enthrall us, make us think, deliberate, learn and unlearn. In a phase led by search engine optimization, how do we really then optimize our belief systems in ourselves in the search of creating a room of our own? How do we then write our identities and our stories as we write for the internet? As I attempt to look for answers to these questions, look for how these stories and selves exist in this rather entangled space, joining with me today is one of my favorite women on the internet, who is known for a classic sense of humor, love for Bollywood, chips oman, journaling, face masks, brilliant articles, and digital content on BuzzFeed India, her bomb Twitter feed, and most importantly, her honesty that seeps through the spaces in between the platform and its audience. Join me right after this short break to welcome Sonia Thomas.
Remember the last vacation you took? What about the one you took 3 years ago? Okay, how much do you really remember? It's a question I've asked myself often over a decade of traveling the world. Hey, I'm Utsav and I do not travel the world for a living. I have a full-time job and responsibilities, but I have made traveling the world a priority. Priority enough that I negotiate extra leave in my job contracts, obsessively track my frequent flyer miles, and I'm willing to take off at the sight of a cheap ticket. Yes, I am cheap. I have lived and worked in 3 countries. I understand human behavior for a living. And these experiences have given me unique insights into places, people, and culture. With over a decade of travel behind me, I increasingly realized one thing, that we cannot see everything. So whatever we see, we must see deeply. Because as the film of memory decays, the imprints which will stand the test of time are the ones felt by the immersion of the senses, not by fleeting encounters with them. Postcards from Nowhere is an immersion into the world of slow travel. One story at a time. Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
So, welcome to the studio, Sonia. I'm really excited for this conversation for many reasons, of which is the first thing that I would like to discuss is how I discovered you on the internet.
Oh God.
So yeah, So it was funny because initially I followed your work with BuzzFeed and I followed your personal account where you made brilliant memes and pop culture references, and I was just like, this is my kind of content. Until one day I'm like studying for a class that's happening at 11 where the professor is going to talk about like feminist reading and criticism in class.
Right.
And she sends a link on the group that says, how privileged are you? It's a BuzzFeed article.
Yes.
And I'm losing it, right? Because I see your name on it and I'm like, oh, I know this person. Yes. And she made our entire class take that test for us to understand from what position are we then looking at the text that we're going to study this semester. And then I kind of realized that content works in multiple ways, right? So when you ever created something like this, or even say for BuzzFeed, did you ever think it's going to be academic purposes or something like that?
No. So, there is, like, to start, I've always known I was meant for the internet.
Correct.
There's no other way to put it. I keep saying this to people. Our generation in general has seen both pre-internet and post-internet, what the world looks like. And I've always known I wanted to be on the internet. Whether it was talking about things I love. So that's Bollywood mostly, movies in general, pop culture. Or it was just doing the news, which was what I initially wanted to do. I wanted to become a journalist, a television journalist, and then television just, became what it is. Yeah. And so I just gave up on that. Okay. And BuzzFeed seemed like something I wanted to do seriously. I did not think it would become something that is considered seriously in class. But that said, one of my colleagues, Shan's video on, I think, Bengalis was about the darknam. He'd made a meme about being asked about your darknam, and that was used in someone's presentation about linguistics. So,
oh, that's so cool.
So, definitely studying memes to understand culture, studying memes to understand the way our world is perceived, the way we are starting to perceive our world, is definitely something that should be studied more.
Yeah.
It's the way like cave paintings are going to be are studied right now.
Correct.
Someday people are going to study memes. I think there already are courses on memes.
I mean, it's really interesting when you start looking like at the history of memes. You think it's a very recent phenomenon, but it's definitely not, right?
No,
because if I'm not wrong, it was Richard Dawkins who wrote this entire essay called The Selfish Gene, where he looks at memes as a concept that has come from the idea of how genes work, and they become like the cultural genes that take your culture forward. And memes are not created, but memes create themselves.
Yeah.
So it's so meta when you try to study something like that. And the first time I read it, I was like, is this guy a visionary, or is he kind of fooling everybody around him?
I will happily buy that theory. I genuinely believe that memes are some of the easiest ways to communicate.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I remember telling one of my friends, listen, if you think it's easier to like convey how you're feeling through a meme, just send that to your therapist. The therapist agreed.
Wow. Okay. So, can you please share the contact of that therapist? I would love to talk to a therapist through memes.
I would. But yeah, like that really helps. Sometimes some people are visual thinkers. Some people think more. I don't know what the word is, but they think more via words.
Okay.
Which
verbal thinker, maybe.
Yes. That's how I think.
Yeah.
I can. If you ask me to write something to describe a situation or a feeling, I'll be able to do that. I'm not much of a visual thinker.
Correct.
Making memes also took a lot of training.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like this friend of mine, she happens to be a designer.
Wow.
So for her, visual thinking comes naturally. So for her to communicate in memes is way easier. And I get it.
Yeah.
So I get it. People have said this a lot. Like sending memes as a way to explain, hey, this is how I feel.
That really helps, right? I mean, humor has been historically used to kind of communicate as poke fun, but the idea of humor is not flat. It comes from this entire place of where you mean something, where you say something larger than the actual joke or the punchline.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, right? So I also wanted to know, what was your first foray with the internet? What was something that you first ever wrote?
So I've had a blog that I've been running since 2009.
Wow. And you've kept it?
And I've kept it. I'm consistent with it fairly. I don't write like every month or every few months. Maybe like if the feeling strikes, I'll post something on it. But no, I've maintained a blog for 10 years now. Wow.
Damn.
I've done that. It has a very, very cheesy name that I will not share. No.
Which is why I asked you, right, if you still kept it, because
I've kept it. It's a very cheesy URL, cheesy name, but it still kind of reflects how I feel. That was my first foray into expressing myself on the internet. Besides Facebook notes, I think I used to post my poetry on Facebook notes, and I would get very concerned messages from friends. Are you okay? I'm like, no man, I've got my 12th boards. I'm depressed.
Yep. Oh God.
So yeah, that was the beginning. Whenever I felt like it, I would write.
Correct.
So some of my diary entries would become blog entries. That's how it became a thing.
Yeah. So with BuzzFeed also, like the kind of memes you made or the kind of content you wrote seems to come from a very, very personal space where you posit it as opposed to your opinion about something, and it becomes a good platform to put that up. But did you ever kind of feel that while writing for the internet, sometimes you stopped writing for yourself and just started writing as to what would say a reader want to read?
Yeah. Okay, so this is something I've debated with myself a lot.
Okay.
Okay, let me explain this. There's some background to it, so bear with me. When I started writing on the internet, I wrote in a void because I didn't have many readers.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone besides ex-schoolmates or friends at college would read my stuff. And even then, I'd get like some feedback here and there, but barely any criticism or any critique. So for me, I wrote in a void that was mostly just, all rosy, and it was great writing in that void because I didn't care about what people were reading. I went through one of my worst phases of depression at the age of 22.
Okay.
I hated my job at the time. I was writing for a magazine, and it wasn't up my alley. I wasn't enjoying it. I was feeling so disillusioned by journalism in general. So, and my dad used to keep saying, why don't you just write more, write for yourself, write for yourself. He's been drilling that into me for so long.
Yeah.
I think since I was a child, that I said, you know what, you're right. I'm actually really tired of writing 1,500 word pieces every week. Let me try writing something for myself. I have an idea. Let me run a 365-day blog.
Whoa,
a blog post for each day for the year. I did that. And I put myself out there continuously for a whole year. So from June 2015 to July 2016.
Okay.
And I think by the end of it, I was so spent that I was just like, I've written enough for myself and also for this audience of like 10, 15, 20 odd friends and ex-friends who have got in touch with me after reading a blog post on the internet. And then, of course, BuzzFeed happened early 2016. So then I started writing for an audience as well as balancing that. So I think I reached a point where I was like, now I write so much for the internet. I express myself so much that now I just want to hold back. I think what happens is you just reach a saturation point where you're like, I want to write for myself, but I don't know how to do it without being judged. Now, I think there's that fear of judgment. There's a fear of being asked why you feel that way and then to answer subsequent questions. And I don't think I want... I was not used to answering questions about my writing. Or about what I'm saying. So I just stopped writing for myself on the internet. I instead found smaller spaces. So I went back to my private blog. I went back. I would like run an alt account on Twitter where I'm just ranting. Where I just have like 10 friends and no followers. I think, and I asked myself, I'm like, why do I need an alt account? Why do I need why do people need Finstas? And that's a debate I've had with myself for very long. That's the point I was coming to, which is that I think our generation is so used to expressing themselves on the internet. That was our safe space growing up.
Correct.
And for us to then be judged on that space becomes difficult. It is now natural for us to vent into that space, to have that void. So we keep looking for smaller spaces on the internet as much as possible. So that's just a feeling I've reconciled with. I was like, I don't really need to tweet about this, but I really want to. Okay, fine, I have an alt account.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think that medium of expression, because it's so natural to us, becomes a space that you absolutely have to use. And I think that's one way I get to write for myself. And I'm like, you know what? I'll put up my one poem from my journal on my private accounts, or like keep that for myself, or like send someone a picture on WhatsApp.
Correct.
I think smaller spaces have now just become my void where I write for myself.
So you kind of had a very, like an Arthurian legend journey where you set out to conquer the internet and you came back home to the smaller spaces writing?
Yeah. That said, I still enjoy the internet.
Yeah.
I
Your Twitter feed tells us that.
Yeah. I love the internet.
Yeah.
It's still such a democratic touchwood. It's still such a democratic space for everyone to express themselves. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. That being said, with a portal like BuzzFeed, or even when you have a Twitter account that has a lot of people constantly tweeting at you or talking about something, at-the-rating you in the process, the response kind of becomes really quick, right? So when you put a post out on BuzzFeed, the kind of response that it will elicit will not even take like a larger window that, say, any other journalistic portal would expect until people write back.
Yeah.
For BuzzFeed, it's just like the comment section is right there for people to kind of, even if it's like a Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum pun where somebody's like, oh my god, that's so you, and tagging like 5 other friends, as opposed to comments that are horrible at times, because there are times I just end up somehow on the Instagram page and I have a lot of fun with the post, but then I see these comments and I'm like, is the instant response really helping anybody? And as a writer, what happens then, right?
We had a policy in the office, never read the comments.
Yeah, that's a really healthy policy.
It's also slightly unhealthy because we have to use the comments as feedback.
Correct.
To understand, is this working? Is this not working? What can we do to make things more readable? Yeah. Are we wrong about something? Are people genuinely pointing out something that we are wrong about? So I think it was about just creating a filter in your head.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, this is abusive. This is not.
Yeah.
Just deal with it.
This is not constructive or this is constructive.
Exactly. I think that way because I understand that I wouldn't want someone to take away that freedom from me on the internet, to be able to comment on something, to be able to criticize something. I wouldn't want to take that away from someone else unless they're being abusive. Yeah. So, I think it's just a matter of creating a filter in your head. Yeah. Not everyone
deserves your attention.
Yeah. And not everyone can do that initially. Yeah. And the criticism might get to you. But I think understanding that your platform is that large and it will be open to as much discussion as possible, which is also the point sometimes. Is just something you have to deal with. I think that is the point. As long as people are not being abusive. Just don't bother.
So you bought a lot of Gulf memes to BuzzFeed. You bought a lot of Bollywood puns to BuzzFeed. So, like, how did that come about? Like, at what moment did you realize, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum is really working well with this new host of audiences?
Okay, so honestly, let me bust this myth.
Yeah,
I do not like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum as much as other people in my... Genuinely, BuzzFeed as an office didn't like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum as much as one of our employees, Nirali, did. Nirali loves Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum. She can quote it left, right, center, background music and everything. Of course, I am also very well versed with the movie, but that's because I grew up watching it.
Yeah.
Kesari ji as a thing was not me. That was Iman Sheikh, Nirali Shah, Rega. These are the early meme makers on BuzzFeed.
Yeah.
They were the ones who really, pulled off using Bollywood pop culture to express, I wouldn't say to use it as memes because that's been happening for a while, but I think to express female lives.
Yeah. I guess Oh My God does that really, really well.
Yes.
I loved Iman's work on it.
Iman's brain should be in a museum. She's genius. She's genius. If I can make a meme today, it is because I have learned by watching Iman. A lot of people have thought my memes were Iman's memes. like people have sent her the memes and been like, you made this, right? And I'm like, no, it's because I've learned from you. So yeah, I learned a lot of meme making from watching these people make memes. So K3G is all them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take credit for that. Making the Gulf or like the Gulf NRI thing a meme actually came from a place of very, very, very low self-esteem.
Okay.
Because it was my first 6 months at the job and I wasn't getting the numbers that everyone else was getting.
Yeah.
And everyone was just sitting and discussing some of their top posts at a table. We were out for drinks and I was just sitting there thinking, I haven't had a hit the way these guys have had a hit. What do I do? So I thought to myself, and I was slightly tipsy on the way home, and I said, you know what? Let's go from top to bottom and break down your identity.
Yeah.
What can you sell that's not already being sold to the public? So then I came up with things like being a Malayali, being a Gulf NRI. I'm like, these are not identities that anyone else is going to be able to talk about. Let me try. I think Rega had done one post about growing up in the Gulf back when she was a writer at BuzzFeed in New York. She had done one post long back and that had done well. So when I pitched it, she said, yeah, it's been a while since someone actually did one. Go ham. And it became a thing.
Yeah.
And my classmates, my mom's
Friends,
students, it just became like a network of things. And then people started associating me with it, which I have no problem with.
I mean, you're the reason why I figured out how Oman chips are delicious.
Yeah. So now
I had deprived myself of them.
Yeah, so now everyone's like, oh, get me some chips, Oman. And I'm like,
Now who's laughing?
Yeah. So this identity, came from a really sad place, but it worked. So,
I mean, you've had one of the things as an audience that I've always noticed is you've always been like honest on the internet, which is a very rare thing to find with a lot of content creators who are sitting on platforms where they're constantly being criticized about their work. So just before we go in for a short break, we'll come back and we'll talk about how you've navigated honesty and identity over the internet.
Sure.
Yeah, perfect.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. You know what? Not just an amazing week. This is going to be an amazing year. We're looking forward to all the stuff that we're going to bring you in 2020. Please remember to fill out our survey, ivmpodcast.com/survey. That's going to really help us know what you guys want from us from 2020 as well, right? I mean, we'd really like to hear from you. So please do fill out that survey. It would be very helpful. Also, would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week. We have Intel, Cambly, and Storytel. Also, if you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's a week of milestones. We have a couple of milestones this week. Geek Fruit released the 300th episode this week. What a journey it's been. Join Tejas and Dinkar as they celebrate this milestone by talking about HBO's new hit show, Watchmen. Actually, surprisingly, at this point, Geek Fruit is the second oldest show on our network, so it's definitely a show if you haven't checked out, please do check out. Another milestone that we have is it's the 50th episode of our Kannada show, Thale Harate. So definitely do check that stuff out. And as for the rest of our regular programming, on Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus talks to actor Neil Bhopalam. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by Anto Philip and Shreyas Jain, the founders of Under 25, to talk about how the Under 25 Summit came about and how they're building youth experiences by engaging in unique ways. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet is joined by co-founder and CEO of Terribly Tiny Tales, Anuj Gosalia, and founder of Pocket Aces, Anirudh Pandita. They discuss how they manage the creative versus business conflict at the heart of any entertainment company. On the 50th episode of Thale Harate, Pawan discusses CAA, NRC, and police reforms with Alok Prasanna and Saryu Natarajan, hosts of Ganatantra. They give insights on the current political scenario of the country and its implications on various sections of society. On Paperback, Rachita and Satyajit are in conversation with the host of Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav Mamoria, who shares his love of reading books that redefine travel for him. And with that, let's get on with your show.
So yeah, just before the break, we were talking about how you've always been honest on the internet. And I've, that's one of the ways I actually, again, discovered journaling through you talking about how journaling really helps. Or even recently when you said don't forget the neck when you put on your face masks. And that became an entire trend, right? So I think it's because there's this place of honesty where your writing or where your content creation comes from. And that kind of has helped you build a community online. How does that work around?
It's because I don't like lying.
Okay.
Okay, so I think one of the things I've been telling all my friends, and the reason everyone comes to me for advice,
Correct.
in a way, is because I have been very self-aware to begin with.
Okay.
And I think someone who wrote this down very well recently, but funny thing is, it's something I had also told her like a year or so back.
Okay.
Is Rega had written this Instagram post recently where she said there is no self-love without self-knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. How can you love someone you don't even know?
No. Yeah.
And you can't love yourself if you don't really know yourself. And a large part of knowing yourself is just being honest with yourself and being like, you're being a piece of shit today. Okay? So, please go and fix that.
Yeah.
Okay? You do not need this negativity. So, I think being honest with yourself is important.
Correct.
And knowing that there are many bits of you that you're going to have to reconcile with constantly is one thing. Being honest on the internet, I mean, I've just not seen a point in building a personality for the internet. I've always been this. There's nothing to change, there's nothing to alter, and like, what personality will I come up with? I am not that original. I am who I am, and that if that's okay, great. Things like not forgetting the neck, that's something my mom's been saying since I was a child, and she's like just thopoing things on my face. Like, come, your skin's looking awful, even I'm putting something. Don't forget your neck. If you forget your neck, then your neck will become like an old lady.
Yeah.
So I was like, Mom, I'm 12. She's like, yeah, but you have to start now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, at 20.
She was a visionary, definitely.
Oh yeah, she's got amazing skin.
Yeah.
She's like in her 50s. She says 35, but
35 for context.
She's 35
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes. But no, she's in her 50s. She has amazing skin, and she's the kind who'll be like on a video call, and I'll be like, I had this awful breakout during my period last week. She'll be like, yeah, same, I had one pimple. And I'm like, you know what, I'm cutting the call. I do not need your privilege in my this is just ridiculous. So that's just something my mom's been telling me for years. And it used to bother me so much. And I'd see like influencers, bloggers just ignoring the neck. I'm like, women, people, just everyone, just do not forget the neck, man. It's important. So that, and what else? Journaling. Journaling though I've been doing since I was 10.
Wow.
So I'm an only child. I didn't have anyone in the house to talk to.
Correct.
That said, I wasn't lonely. I just needed something to vent. So fun fact was that I was obsessed with Harry Potter when I first started journaling. So my first journal was named Harry. Okay. Dear Harry. It was something I picked up from Anne Frank.
Okay.
Who called her Journal Kitty.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Kitty?
I guess, if I'm not wrong, it's been ages since I read Anne Frank. For a moment there, I was like, Anne Frank, who? No, can't do that.
Yeah. So she used to call her journal Kitty. I think so it wasn't even Anne Frank. It was about Anne Frank that I'd read about in a book.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I read Anne Frank. Then I started this. So
I think so many of us have started with Anne Frank as the first novel that you ever came across, right? I mean, if you didn't have the privilege of growing up with Harry Potter, of course. Yeah. Then Anne Frank, because I think most of your school syllabi talks about Anne Frank to a large extent.
No, I wasn't that lucky. I went to CBSE schools.
I went to an SSE school. Can we talk about being lucky? I studied the abridged versions of Tempests and Merchant of Venice, and my questions were
You
like,
studied Shakespeare, congrats.
my questions were, what did Shylock say to Portia in the beginning of the text? Like, yes, of course, that's the entire purpose why Shakespeare wrote it, that someday you can sit and ask a child what Shylock said to Portia, of course.
I still wouldn't know. I just know the story. So I had like I had read like abridged versions of these stories when I was a child.
Yeah.
That's it. That was my Shakespeare.
Okay.
I think the most Shakespeare I was taught was bits of Julius Caesar.
Okay, we never had Julius Caesar.
Yeah, just the part where he was stabbed and then Mark Antony gives that whole speech.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the only bit we studied in CBSE. We didn't study any more Shakespeare. So I never ventured in that direction either. No, my thing with novels actually started when I was 7 or 8.
Okay.
Because there was this girl in my class who had impeccable handwriting and was a teacher's pet. And she once asked me, so you like reading books? And I said, yes.
Yeah.
She said, what books do you read? So I'd read like abridged versions of Heidi and Robin Hood. And I said, I read those. And she was like, I read books without pictures, And that's when I knew I was doing something wrong. Books without pictures. What? And then I said, okay, you know what? Now I'm a grown up. I'm going to read books without pictures. So I forced myself to then shift to novels. I don't even remember what my first novel was. Must have been Enid Blyton or something.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's another.
Yeah. That's a whole other genre.
Yeah. But I mean, because it was easily accessible in our libraries, right? So, like, I remember they used to put all the Shakespeare in the restricted section of my school library. So I was like, now I want to read those. Don't give me your Secret 5, like Secret 7 and your Famous 5.
This is how I started reading Sidney Sheldon.
Yeah.
Because it was adult content.
Yeah.
So at 11, I read Sidney Sheldon.
Yeah. So when we were in school, we have done a lot of risque things for like novels because...
Just because they're restricted.
Yeah, we were not allowed to read Twilight in our school, right? So,
I was the Twilight dealer. Like my...
Oh God, thank goodness people recognize that. Oh God.
I was that girl in school
who had Twilight.
Whose one copy of Twilight circulated through grades 11 and 12. Like seniors who didn't know me came up to me and they were like, hey, can I borrow your copy of Twilight after her or what? So my copy of Twilight is in tatters. It was manhandled in that 1 year.
Yeah.
And
we also had
I was the dealer.
Yeah, we also had a Twilight dealer in our class, and she used to, basically her elder sister used to get these novels and she used to sneak them to school, and we used to go sit next to her in class, and we used to have rounds like who's going to sit next to her and who's going to read until when. There was a point where her book had like 7 or 8 bookmarks at any one point where everybody's reading the text. But I was like, thank God people used bookmarks.
That's a way more efficient.
She was very efficient. She was very particular about who's holding her books, how we're going to circulate them.
Much smarter than me, who just couldn't say no to people.
You couldn't take them. She had rules, okay? You couldn't take them home. And at any point in time, if I need help with my homework, I can call you up and make you do that.
Oh, leverage.
But she also kind of like dealt with Chetan Bhagat later. So,
I mean, let's face it, we've all had a Chetan Bhagat phase.
Yeah.
Everyone's had a Chetan Bhagat phase. It's fine.
I think mine stopped with Revolution 2020. I was like, I can't read.
It took you a while.
I can't read any further. Like, I tried staying by you all this while, expecting it will get better at some point. But I read Harry Potter for the first time when I was in my TYBA. So I made a lot of people read Harry Potter in college. I didn't read it because I had this one snob in school who was like, oh, you still haven't read Harry Potter? I was like, you know what? I don't want to read it. I'm cooler than you. And then I was like, when I actually started reading it, I was like, oh my God, I've kept myself away from the joy that this place is for so long because of this one snob. Right? Oh God.
But the reason I started reading Harry Potter at like 8, 9 was because I remember when I was 4. Okay, and this is a very vivid memory I have. I was 4. It's 97, and she'd won the Smarties Award. And it was broadcasted on the cover of every Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone cover at the time. those covers, the old Bloomsbury covers,
yeah.
yes. So I remember, and it was a BBC feature, and we used to watch BBC quite a bit at the time. And my mum pointed at the screen and she said, you know, someday you should read books like those. So I remember, like, my initial pictures, books without pictures phase. Once that began, I was like, Harry Potter to padhna padega.
Yeah.
Oh, BBC में देखा था तो अब तो पढ़ना पड़ेगा. I didn't know it was as big. By then it was what, 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
So only the first 4 books had come out.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it was a phenomenon. That. Yeah, I just thought it was like something on BBC.
Yeah, I started reading when The Cursed Child was about to come out, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I went down the first book in a day. And then I was like, I want more. Give me more. Please don't stop. And then I read Cursed Child and I was like, oh, never mind. It's okay.
For those who haven't, I mean, I was lucky to catch the play last year on Broadway.
What?
It is beautiful. And honestly, the screenplay does it no justice.
Yeah. Figured when I read it.
I mean, of course, Panju is still a problem.
Yeah.
But the play itself is this 5-hour ordeal. Yeah,
so
2.5 hours with a break in between. It's a whole thing, but it's gorgeous. It's some of the best set design, some of the best acting. I was weeping, and it was like this flood of like children and adults and
so cool
people our age. It was so nice, and I went with my best friend. Best day ever. Yeah.
No, I really want to do that someday. Go for a Broadway adaptation.
Yeah, it would be amazing. Yeah.
Now, you know, when you talk, like, since you're talking about your best friend, I think a lot of these things came up when you were doing Girls Feed, right? So, like, conversations around women, people who identify as female, and you did a very inclusive conversation with Girls Feed. So how did the writing and the conception of Girls Feed ever happen?
So Girls Feed was a concept that was thrown around a lot in the room for a while. I remember we had something called Wednesday Club.
Okay.
Just from 5 to 6 on Wednesdays, we'd just sit and talk. It was a way to just come up with ideas and stuff through casual conversation, because that's how we just realized that that's where some of the best ideas come from. And one Wednesday Club, we were not doing anything. We just stopped working at 5. And we all sat down, and somehow the topic went to porn. And all of us, all the girls, and at the time it was a female majority office. So all of us sat down and we were just discussing porn. And 4 men in our office were just huddled in the other side of the room, and they were just sitting there very, very quietly. And we were just out here very loudly saying porn, you know, what do you watch? Oh, this, and where do you watch it? Oh, on my phone. Oh, why do you use the phone? Use the laptop. You know, but then there's that inconvenience of using a laptop. It went places. So we were like, dude, this should be a show. Someone should record this. I was like, I'm so sick of podcasts just having like these roundtables of men in them. We should just do a Girls Feed, you know, just us sitting on a table and talking about things. So we had to write pitches for shows. That was last November, December, and I was like, okay, you know what, I want to pitch Girls Feed. And I knew I wanted to host it. I knew I wanted to like run the ideation bit and like create it from scratch. So then of course once Tinder came on board, initially the idea wasn't accepted, or like it was put aside. But then in February you were told, we have to produce Girls Feed. And I was like, let's do it. We have to come up with the first episode in 3 weeks. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Okay.
So we have to not just come up with like topics for 6 episodes and talking points, but we have to produce our first episode in 3 weeks.
Right.
Okay then. So it was chaos, and we would come up with episodes from scratch in 2 weeks, and my God, what a team. We had reached a point where Girls Feed was a nightmare.
Correct.
And because of how tight our deadlines were.
3 weeks is like really,
No.
really cutting
3
it
weeks
close.
was for the first episode. After that, every episode was fortnightly.
Okay.
So every episode was created from scratch. We used to write the sketches from scratch, get them approved, this, that.
And coordinating so many people in
coordinating
one room.
people in one room, getting them, on board, making sure everyone is on the same page with terms of talking points, this, that. Oh my God, it was the whole thing. And we did it.
Yeah.
So it was honestly that team is next level.
Yep.
That team we have in the room. It's beautiful. So yeah, Girls Feed wouldn't have been anything without that team. That coming up with the idea wasn't original. Like, it didn't come to me.
Okay.
Obviously, it was just a feeling we all had. We knew we wanted to create something like this, for a while.
So then, when you did Girls Feed and then you started, going on with the course or whatever else that you were doing, has Girls Feed kind of changed how you look at the internet, or after those conversations, like, do you look at things differently now?
No, in fact, it just reaffirms the same thing I've been feeling about the internet, which is that everyone wants to feel special on the internet, but there's nothing more uniting than the internet.
Yep.
I think we spend a lot of time online hating on things. We're like, oh, this is not content. This is not my content. I don't like this. Ye kya bakwas hai? Kuch bhi karti hai, kuch bhi banati hai. I've seen a lot of people who say that about creators, but also I'm like, hey, look at their views.
Makes sense.
Look at their views. They clearly know something about some part of the internet that you don't.
Yeah.
And do you just realize you're probably not the audience?
Yeah. That's the thing.
I think understanding that there are spaces on the internet for everyone, every single person, is something that Girls Feed just reaffirmed.
Yeah.
I think the snobbishness that comes with what kind of content you consume, I'm like, chodna.
That's the thing when it comes to TikTok, right?
Yeah.
You have this entire hordes of people.
I love TikTok.
Yeah.
I love TikTok because, see, initially it started with just kids who were very good at editing.
Yeah.
So like those transitions.
Yes, you can't pull that off. If you
can't pull that off.
Like, if with the entire snobbishness and the idea of elite content that we have, you cannot do a TikTok. I mean, people who literally diss on it, I'm like, try shooting one.
It takes forever.
And it's so amusing to watch people record it.
Yeah.
Like, people at my university do it, and I'm just like, how? How do you figure out the exact timing?
The slow motion recording. It's hilarious to watch a TikTok being produced.
Yep.
But I love them. There's this page that I follow which is called TikTok Cringe Cop.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to talk about it. It's such a cool page, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so I know they call themselves the Cringe Cops, but I think they are just sourcing the best of the best.
Right.
Like, there was this really wholesome one of this kid doing this trend with her dad, and then they like transition into school clothes, and I'm like,
God, so cute.
So cute. And honestly, see, if you don't like TikTok, you're not the audience for it. That's it. Yeah. I think this idea that someone has to make content for everyone or for you specifically, like a lot of comments on Girls Feed that we got were, hey, now next time you should just make a boys feed.
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
like, that's the entire internet. Sir. That would be the internet.
Yep.
So go search for your own boys feed. There are enough podcasts
boys feeds out there.
There are enough podcasts out there with just hordes of men sitting on couches and talking. बहुत देख लिया मैंने, काफी boring है. I'm sick of it. If you would like to watch Girls Feed, great. If you don't, move on. It's fine.
That's the thing with cringe, right? I mean, at the cost of quoting Macklemore right now, I'm like, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah.
I mean, hello. But if you had to change one thing about the internet, be it anything that you really feel that could have been done better around, then what would that be?
I think people need to also stop taking it as seriously as they do.
Yeah.
The internet has a lot of power.
Correct.
Definitely. It's way more powerful than we give credit.
Yeah.
Definitely. Just off the top of my head, speaking of Me Too, that's that was a movement by Tarana Burke in like 2006, if I'm not mistaken, and like bringing it back in 2017 and making it a worldwide movement.
Correct.
The internet only could have done that.
Definitely.
And that's the power the internet holds. But also, like, don't take it as seriously.
Yeah.
I think I see a lot of my colleagues, my peers, friends who get so worked up about the internet.
Numbers that follow.
Numbers, not just numbers, but about like people on the internet and stuff like that. I'm like, you don't like it, just unfollow. I think creating a space that is also good for you is most important. I think one of the largest problems that we have is FOMO.
Oh God,
we love shitting on people on the internet, but also we want to keep hate following them.
Yeah.
Stop doing that.
True.
Like, if you don't like something, just unfollow. Like, just do that.
It's very simple. It's just right there.
Yeah. And honestly, after I quit BuzzFeed, because I didn't have to like follow a lot of celeb accounts now for work or whatever, I just unfollowed people I didn't like. I'm tired of bitching about the celebrity in a void. It's not going to affect their stardom. It's not going to affect their numbers.
True.
It doesn't matter. Let me just unfollow this person and be happier on the internet.
Yeah.
That's
the thing, that you can custom create your own space, which is not the kind of flexibility a lot of forms give you. So in case you tomorrow want to switch from writing romance to writing horror or creating a space where you're known for all the spooky things you talk about, just do it. It's one Instagram feed upheaval away, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you like one post about Taylor Swift and your entire explore feed becomes Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So
we live
honestly,
in scary times.
I mean, it's scary. Yes, the algorithm can be intimidating, sure, but you've anyway given away half your information.
Exactly. You signed up for it.
To Google and Facebook, so we're all going to die. It's fine.
Yeah. Do you kind of feel like there's always this difference, like while working on the internet, you met a lot of these people that you knew online in the offline spaces. Do you feel there's a difference between this actual self and the projected self, like people talk about, or are people always like as honest as say you were being with the internet? How did you feel that?
No, a lot of people are very different. Some of my online friends are very different in real life.
Okay.
I have this friend who's super opinionated on the internet. Lots, actually. This could literally be anyone in my...
This can be a subtweet at anybody at this point.
Anybody. Yeah, but it's... and these are things I tell them. I'm like, oh my God, you're very different in real life. That's fine. I think that's also okay because, again, like I said, the internet is a safe space. So your mind can really just take you anywhere on the internet, and that's fine. If you don't have the safe space in real life to be yourself, I think being that self on the internet is amazing. We are in a time where people can do that and do that happily. So I think that's the point. It's totally chill if people are not the same as they are on the internet. That said, I don't think we should also expect people to be as they are on the internet. And then be upset like, oh my God, itni nakchadi hai pata hai real life mein. And I'm like, it's fine. Not everyone's going to be the same person offline. And also, I think my, I wouldn't say obligation, but I think my need to be honest on the internet has also come from this idea that I wouldn't, if I met me in real life, would I feel that way? Would I feel that, oh God, this is a very different person? No, I wouldn't want to feel that way if I met me in real life. So that also is there. Just this need to please. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you for joining us, and this has been like a brilliant conversation because we went from like Harry Potter to Anne Frank to Nakchadi people on the internet to also people should follow TikTok Cringe Cop because it'll
TikTok
make
Cringe
your
Cop
day.
is the best
Is the best
Instagram page on the internet.
So where can we find you on the internet?
My handles everywhere are Sonio, so that's SOKNEEOH.
Is that a very Hermione inspired?
Yes, it did come from Hermione, but also because of the joke that everyone thought it was hilarious to crack, which was to call me Sonia.
Yeah.
I'm not Sonia, I'm Sonia.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yep.
And my friends call me Sonio, so.
That's really nice. Yeah. So it's like your real world meeting your online world?
Yeah.
It was so much fun connecting with you, like
Same
in the
here.
offline space. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm @Laxmi Krishnan on Twitter and @LiteraryChills on Instagram.
Hi guys, this is Ayushi.
And I am Ritasha.
And welcome to Agla Station Adulthood.
It's a fun podcast we've got going on, and we'd love for you to tune in and enjoy with us.
Join us as we stop at various stations and discuss different topics that seem to be bothering us and hopefully
Dating,
you as well.
relationships, beauty, just being an adult, lots of different things.
We don't have a great grip on it, but we've done okay so far.
Catch Agla Station Adulthood every Thursday on the IVM app, the IVM website, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.